2020 was a bad year. Now 2021's telling 2020 to hold its beer. Another Boeing 737 crash, a citation goes down over Oregon, and the NTSB makes recommendations on flight instructors. Those topics and more today on Taking Off. Welcome to Taking Off. I'm Christy Wong. Thank you for joining us today. We have some pretty heavy topics to cover. First up, some sad news out of Jakarta, Indonesia. A Boeing 737-500 operated by Sriwijaya Air operating as flight SJ182 lost contact with air traffic control just 4 minutes after departing Soekarno-Hatta International Airport. SJ182 was cleared for takeoff at 2:36 p.m. local time in Jakarta. The 737 was expected to arrive in Pontianak just over an hour later. They were cleared to climb to flight level 290 and had climbed through 10,000 feet MSL when the airplane's track changed abruptly and began to fall. The speed dipped way down to about 120 knots as indicated over the ground. Actual airspeed is unknown at this time. The stall speed of a 737 is about 120 knots, depending on a lot of factors like temperature and weight. It appears they crashed 11 miles north of the airport and into the Java Sea less than a minute later. Right now, investigators have no idea what caused the crash, but they do have a few eyewitnesses. 3 fishermen told the local news that they heard an explosion and felt a sudden wave around them at the time the plane crashed. They initially thought it was thunder as it was dark and raining at the time. Another eyewitness described it as a bomb on the water. In a collaborative effort, the Indonesian Navy, Police, Coast Guard, and Transportation Ministry launched a total of 28 ships, 5 helicopters, and 2 airplanes to take part in the search and rescue. Sadly, it is believed that all 62 passengers and crew have perished in the crash. Several bags of wreckage and debris have already been recovered and turned over to investigators. Right now, the focus is to find the infamous black boxes, the cockpit voice recorder, and the flight data recorder to see what information they can piece together about this crash. So far, it's mostly speculation. There was weather in the area, but investigators aren't sure that it played a part. Investigators will want to also review maintenance records. Now, for those non-pilots out there watching, you've heard a lot about the problems with the Boeing 737 in the media over the last year and a half. But that focus was on the 737 MAX, a newer model of the 737 that is substantially different from the older 737 models. The Boeing 737 as a whole has an incredibly safe track record. But let's examine this particular plane. This one was a 737-500 series with the first flight in 1994 and put into service back then with Continental and United. The plane was sold to Sriwijaya in 2012. The last fatal accident of a 737-500 was in 2008. At this early stage, we just don't have enough information to determine what happened. Moving across the Pacific a year and a half ago, a King Air A90 used for parachute operations in Mokulea, Hawaii, crashed, killing all 11 people on board. The National Transportation Safety Board just released safety recommendations concerning the June 2019 crash. The plane was owned and operated by Oahu Parachute Center and was departing for a normal skydive operation. It departed Dillingham Airfield at 6:22 p.m. local time in Hawaii, climbed about 200 feet, but then suddenly banked and crashed into the ground at an inverted 45-degree nose-down attitude. The ensuing crash caused a fire and fatally injured everyone on board. So what happened? It's likely that the airplane got into a stall configuration during takeoff. During their investigation, the NTSB received a report from a former coworker of the accident pilot that he liked giving passengers a thorough ride through risky, sharp maneuvers during takeoff. Digging further, the NTSB also discovered that the accident pilot failed his check rides on the first attempt for his private pilot certificate, his instrument rating, and his commercial certificate. For our non-pilot friends watching, a check ride is the practical portion of the pilot examination. We are required to pass a written, oral, and practical examination for each pilot certificate and rating. The accident pilot would go on to pass during second attempt check rides. However, it was also discovered that the endorsing flight instructor for the accident pilot had a very low pass rate of only 59% first attempt check rides for his students. To put that in perspective, the national average is around 80% pass rate for first attempt check rides. 59% pass rate. Because of this, the NTSB has recommended that the FAA develop a system to automatically alert its inspectors of flight instructors whose students' pass rates fall below that 80%. Although a tracking system does exist to monitor pass rates, there currently is no automatic notification to an FAA inspector when a pass rate falls below the FAA established rate of 80% and therefore becomes substandard. The FAA's stated practices on flight instructor surveillance are that substandard pass rates are indicative of instruction that needs to be more closely monitored so the FAA inspector can determine whether the instructor is providing adequate flight instruction. In this case, the NTSB found, however, that even with the substandard student pass rate, the Mokulea accident pilot's flight instructor was not receiving the appropriate additional scrutiny. The NTSB also recommended that until a system that generates an automatic notification is implemented, FAA inspectors should review flight instructors' pass rates on an ongoing basis to identify any in need of closer monitoring. Now, does the FAA have to implement the recommendations of the NTSB? No. But I, for one, hope they do in this case for the sake of students and all future pilots. So what do you think? Are you a flight instructor? What are your thoughts on these recommendations? Leave your comments below. One takeaway that can make me, personally, a better pilot and a better person is to remember an airplane can stall at any speed and that the power on stall is very real. That an airplane is not a vehicle to show off in. It's a serious, potentially deadly serious responsibility. During critical phases of flight, I need to keep the chatter and behavior to specific flight tasks. What about you? Have you ever showboated behind the yoke? You probably shouldn't leave a comment about that below. Heading even further east, a Cessna Citation 560 crashed on January 9th in Oregon. This one is very hard for me personally. While being furloughed, I've been flying a Citation 560. I'm very familiar with this airplane. It's being reported this jet had one pilot and one passenger. This plane typically requires a two-pilot crew. However, a pilot can receive a single pilot exemption with additional training. The plane was on an IFR flight to Boise, and on climb out during the handoff to ATC, they received a low altitude alert from the controller, prompting them to climb immediately and go to flight level 230. ATC also questioned the pilot about his radio, which he responded was working better now. The Citation hit flight level 230, but continued climbing up to 310. ATC reached out to him but got no response, and in moments the plane turned and spiraled down from 31,000 feet, unresponsive, all the way to impacting the ground. Again, too early to know what happened. Going back to flying this plane as a single pilot. Many owner-operators of jets will try to save costs wherever they can, and it's often more cost-effective to hire just one pilot and pay for that single pilot training. We do know that this flight was operated under Part 91, but don't know if it required two pilots or not. It's still too early to tell the facts. A takeaway for me here is to be very aware of hypoxia. I'm a pressurization freak ever since the Payne Stewart incident. One time, I was flying right seat on a Citation very similar to this model, and as we climbed out, I noticed we were having issues holding pressurization, so we leveled out around 10,000 to try to troubleshoot it. When we were unable to fix it, we descended below 10,000 and asked ATC to return to the field for maintenance. When the pandemic is over, I know I'm planning a trip to Oklahoma City for a spin in the FAA chamber to see how hypoxia affects me personally. What about you? Have you ever done the hypoxia chamber? Leave a comment below. And finally, a quick update on the furlough situation. You may have heard that just before Christmas, Congress passed the updated stimulus package. This package included payroll support for the airlines, but stipulated that all furloughed employees must be recalled. So, yay me, right? Sort of. We were all recalled, but it takes a lot of time to retrain all of the pilots who were furloughed. They can't just throw us back onto the line and go fly. So it's likely to be a few months before you'll see me back in the simulator. The key to this situation will be air travel picking back up. Personal travel is actually doing pretty well. It's the business travel that has tanked due to the pandemic. Probably businesses concerned about liability for their employees as they travel. But hopefully, we'll see more and more business travel pick back up. That way, we won't have to depend on the government stimulus money in the future. Come on, 2021, you're off to a rocky start, but you can still turn this all around. We at TakingOff are so grateful for all of our viewers. A special thanks to our Patreon supporters at Pilot Christie, as well as our Hangar Club subscribers. Links are provided below. Please like, subscribe, and share so we can get more aviation content out to the masses. Fly safe, and we'll see you next time on Taking Off.